Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day you're watching this. I do hope it finds you well. My name is John, and I am an author, and I'm coming to you here on another Writing Wednesday to talk a little bit about different aspects of my writing process. And this week I am coming to talk to you a little bit how I craft and work um, dialogue in my stories. Um, Really, this is an area where I do sometimes, like, in a lot of ways I find dialogue scenes very easy to write because it's a back and forth, what do different characters like know, like what are they discussing, what do I want their discussion to communicate to the audience or to my readers. Um so a lot of that comes down to you know just what I'm working on, what I'm doing. But I tend to find dialogue scenes among the more difficult to come back and edit later. Because, sort of, on the initial pass of writing, you know, I have the different, bits of communication and sort of how I want the scene to play out. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, I tend to plan a lot of things out in my head before I actually get to writing them down. But with dialogue, at least on a rough draft, it's not uncommon for all participants in a conversation to end up all sounding a bit the same or a bit like me. So a lot of editing is coming back and changing words, changing emphasis, adding some emotion from one character or multiple to sort of make them a little bit more unique. This is especially true when it's conversations that are very important to the plot or what's going on, or where something particular needs to be decided or revealed to my readers through the conversation. You know, it takes some time to craft, in editing, to craft the right balance between, like, okay, how quickly would they give out this information? Why would they be talking about this? What emotions they would be having, and sort of manipulating it to that. Less important, or sort of character building conversations are somewhat easier to write. And I've had some fun over the years of writing, of when I'm featuring sort of a one off or hardly or not commonly featured character, to just have some fun with. In the most recent book I'm writing, in the book I'm currently writing, When Gods Do Meddle, I've just a few chapters ago had a sequence that just, I'm very proud of it, just absolutely flowed off my keyboard, for lack of a better word, where sort of my main group of characters is sort of getting hunted and hiding, so they hide out with sort of a merchant caravan, particularly. One of them is a cousin of one of my main characters, and it was just fun writing. You know, I didn't really need to write to, like, okay, he's a you know he's sort of a gruff, unhappy individual. You know, with overall his head and heart in the right place, just gruff and grumpy, and it was just fun writing that. Like, it was a very easy viewpoint to take, um, and bringing it in. And then, yeah, the, like, character, and but other places sometimes character nuance, particularly more featured, um, or regularly featured characters, it can become a little bit difficult, because, okay, how do I keep consistency from chapter to chapter, and, or from conversation to conversation. And I've run into that, especially on my first book, with the changes that came along, where I wrote it and sort of rough drafted it in chunks over the course of 3 years. That it really, um, you know keeping the conversations consistent. And there was certainly some work done of where the characters had changed some, the sort of viewpoints had changed some, or because I was following one central character, the difficulty at a couple places of oh, I want to communicate a certain idea here, but none of these characters that are in this particular scene would really feel like they would normally have a conversation like this or take this viewpoint. So sort of having to work it around, sometimes add a new character, um, sometimes add a different new character, come up with some excuse that they would say something or do something or state something. So, you know, my reader has a chance to understand or get to know them a little bit better. It's just finding those moments that a lot of times editing is really about refining them. Like I've added over the course of editing The Shadow of the Past, I added at several points to have a certain conversation or reveal certain information. I added several characters, sort of filtered throughout to relay or provide important information or viewpoints. As a lot of that is around, I don't want to always rely on my set, trying to think of the right word for it, my you know limited omniscience like narrator to I don't want to pass over important conversations like they were these two characters were walking and coming over the hill and having a conversation about you know this, that, or the other thing, and thus reveal it. I'd rather actually have the conversation. Now, it's beneficial, I think, sometimes, if it's what's being revealed or the information is just not worth, the dialogue occasionally, it's worthwhile just, having the bulk of a dialogue, and then, come to a natural sort of conclusion for a chapter, but then end it with, and then you know, they spent the rest of the night, talking and strategizing about the coming battle. I don't think that there's a problem with that, but I don't want that to be the only thing. I want to have, ideally some conversation, probably several pages at least before that, where they're really talking about the battle and what's going on to sort of, what their general plans are, just to give the readers an idea of what's going on or what's about to happen. And yeah, I think a lot of it's just about finding that balance, finding the show don't tell balance of where I'm showing the audience through the characters, through what they're doing, rather than just explaining it through the narration, when I could possibly avoid it. In terms of actual details, it's that's another thing that comes through editing, is making the dialogue and grammar sound to like more unique, um, to each other, like certain like modes of speech, way of talking. This character is blunter. This character is more circuitous in their talk. This character is more thoughtful. This character is more reserved. This character is more talkative. And that's what comes out a lot in editing, is sort of tweaking that dialogue. And that's why I said it's like rough drafting dialogue. I find quite easy most of the time, but they're among these scenes I find most difficult to edit because those little tweakings, and also the tendency of it can be, dialogue scenes can get very repetitive very easily. So finding some balance between, you know, character A stood up and said this, character B rolled their eyes and said that, character A, stretched their back, sat back down, and said this. It's like, okay, I like including, I think it's very helpful to include like movements and non physical reactions, because a lot of communication in real life is, non like nonverbal, like facial and physical cues. So I like to communicate that, but the repetitiveness of also like such and such said this, such and such said this, such and such asked this, such and such explained this. Of like, I tend to go back and forth, try to use different verbiage, different words, and then for said, talk, asked, use different different versions of that, different synonyms. I can't remember the word exactly. I think it's synonyms. Um, for that, or and sometimes when it's clear who's talking, of like I sometimes don't need to even do that if it's just two characters talking. I'll sometimes you know go a line of dialogue or so where it's just the dialogue. No, character A said, character B said. It's just character A said this, and there's just the response, trusting my readers to sort of follow what's going on. I try not to do that for more than two or three different parts of the conversation, usually parts where it makes sense for it to be sort of very rapid fire between them. Also, because I have, like, in my personal experience, maybe this is my ADHD, is if there's more than two or three stacked two or three instances of that, it can get very easy to lose track of who exactly is speaking, even if it's only two characters, of like sort of tracking, especially if they're longer quotes. Like if it's more than a sentence or two, I'll almost always put who's speaking, because just you know if you've got like pages that long and you've got like half a page of just like back and forth, it can be a little hard, at least again me personally, to track who's speaking, because I have to remember back to the beginning of the page. um Another thing I tend to do with that is sometimes, as well as tracking back to the beginning of the page, I sometimes find myself having to track back to previous chapters to sort of remind myself, like, okay, how did I have this character talk? What sort of knowledge and what viewpoint did I bring to them, just sort of to refresh myself and make sure that's being clear and moving along. Well, that is really the thoughts I had on sort of some of my thoughts on how I write and craft and edit dialogue. Let me know what you think. How do you like to write dialogue? What kind of flow do you like? I would love to hear some suggestions of things you do to sort of make your characters seem more different, more distinct from one another. I think that can be very, very helpful. I would love to hear your comments and thoughts and feedback on that below. As always, it would be awesome if you guys were to buy my books, The Shadow of the Past and In the Sunburned Red. Both of those are linked below, as well as like, share, subscribe, follow me on my socials, all in my website. All of those are linked below. That would be amazing. My name again is John, and I do hope you have a wonderful day. Get a chance to do and experience something creative, and I'll catch you on the next one.